sounding good. There we go. All right. So, welcome to Ballroom Mastery Q&A Wednesday. Awesome to have you here. Thank you for tuning in. Do I have a show lined up for you? I've got 4 fantastic questions. We're going to go through Quickstep. We're going to go through the weave in Waltz for you, Kingsley, who just wrote in then live. Thank you very much. I'm also going to go through the politics of dancing for those who are in DanceSport or Pro-Am or are teachers, because I've got some interesting thoughts on that through my own personal experience, which was less than pleasant, let's just put it that way, and how I managed to get ahead of it, get beyond it, so I can do things like create Ballroom Mastery, get on with things and teach in my studio, and to really maintain my own motivation outside of the crazy world of politics in dance. And I also want to go through a bit of Latin to talk about the hips. So if you have a question for me, make sure you write it in and make sure you leave a question or a comment below after the show. Okay, so here is the fundamental thing. When we look at improving our dancing, you got to think about the strategy that you're deploying and how it's going to work to make you better. So you have to go back to a video I did on, I think, Monday, where I was talking about the reality of dancing versus the expectations that you might have as well. So you've got to align those. It's really, really important. So part of these questions are also to help course correct anything you may be doing wrong, to reinforce what you're doing right, and to also give a second opinion to maybe what your coaches have as well. Because fundamentally, all of us coaches have the same information, right? We're using the same books. We've done it through our own personal experience of training, and we have our own analogies and metaphors and ways of explaining. But fundamentally, truth should be the truth. You know, stepping forward shouldn't be how to use it properly, how to master it. However, there isn't 6 different truths to a forward walk. So there are some basic principles that if you master them, they're really going to shift and shape the way you go. I want to give a shout out to Susan, who wrote to me this morning and said that she's achieved some amazing success just from some of these videos in conjunction with what her very good coach has been teaching and guiding her through. So she's been winning some comps, placing in the elderly or an older division. So congratulations to you for doing the work, and thank you for being a loyal subscriber here. Now, I want to talk to you, Kingsley, about the weave. Now, for those who have a problem with their weave in ballroom dancing, let me know, right? It's not an easy one. I'm going to read out what he says. He says, I have a problem of my frame breaking when I do the weave from Promenade. This is a waltz figure. You can also do it in other dances, but we use it for the waltz. In fact, it breaks when I'm doing the chasse as well. My frame becomes awkward, it gets really bad, and my chest leans towards the girl, and my right elbow angles backwards, slightly behind my back. Okay, so again, this is a really difficult one. Not difficult to, well, look, it's going to take time to fix. Let's just put it that way, because you've got to change the way your body will dance and move. Now, I don't have a partner here. I've got a little chair, so I'm not going to dance with the chair today. Let me just put that there. Rightio. Okay, so first things first. The weave is a beautiful figure to dance in the waltz. For those who don't know what it is, hopefully you do. We start in promenade position, and the weave goes forward, lady comes around, and then we end with the 4, 5, 6, which is an outside change. So it's 6 steps, and we start in promenade. We can end in promenade or end in closed hold. Now, for the frame to, let's address this the first one. When I'm breaking my frame from the weave, what am I doing wrong? Okay, so let's discuss this from the angle of your actual frame breaking, because there's other problems associated with keeping connection, okay? So if we look at the frame, the first thing to think about is where is your hold in relation to the lady? So the purpose of a frame in ballroom dancing is to create a space for the lady to be housed within. So I always like to think that the lady's head is off your center, you're off her center first of all, so her back should be in this hand. Now, the left hand hold, of course, 45-degree angle just below your eye line, that's sort of where it sits, and your arms are always in front of your spine. So if I hold my arms out naturally to the side, you can see my arm line is in front of the spine. That's where I want it to be the whole time when I dance. I never want my elbows in line with my spine, and I certainly do not want them behind my spine, okay? Now, promenade position is where most men, including myself, when you first learn to dance and you dance for a long time, it falls apart, and part of the reason is because when you're both moving, the lady must remain in the right pocket of you. I always call it the pocket. She's got to sit in here. So when you're in promenade position, let's say that's the closed hold. When you go into promenade, well, what is promenade? The lady is turning out her right side to form a V from your hips. But if her head is in line with yours, you're going to have a big problem, Kingsley, because your arm will come forward all the time, no matter what, because her body is now in the wrong position. So you've got to actually train promenade so that when you rise up and you come back, I call it growing, not going. So you must grow, keep her in your pocket, and as you step out into promenade position, she is behind your moving leg. So if I was to take a step forward, and I'll just try to get the right angle here, if I was to step forward on step 1 of the weave, I want to make sure that her legs are not matching mine. They need to be behind me. She's actually behind me. Why? Because in promenade position, the lady is behind the man. Now, if you see my arm, it's still where it was if my feet were closed. So I haven't shifted my arm. And so we have to practice with our partner stepping into promenade position. That's the key. Take hold, turn into promenade by rotating your right side and opening the left. The lady should turn, and then when you take your step 1 of the weave, which is with the right foot forward in CBMP, she's going to stay behind you, and you want to practice this position. So if I do it in front of the camera or on this side there, you can see my feet are in one track, my body is strongly turned because I'm trying to maintain the hold, and then therefore the arm can stay behind me if she's in my pocket. The moment her leg or foot, if it matches where mine is, your arm is going to come forward every time like that. It's going to break and come forward, no doubt. Now, the extreme of that is if you take it behind your body. That's just too much. So remember that the arm lines are always in front of your spine. And you must practice going into your promenade position and then practice your body swinging so it maintains that line the whole time. Lots of questions that people ask me is, how do I maintain my frame? How do I do it? You must practice things individually and then aim to move through these movements. In my professional career, so in the first 10 years of dancing amateur, we had all sorts of variations of choreography, very complicated steps that we learned. We've done all the figures that you can possibly think of. What I found amazing, as we became more skilled at dancing and we rose through into the professional ranks, our coaches always said your routine should get simpler, but you dance them better. And so we always kept the weave from promenade in our ballroom routine, always. It was one of the last things we did to finish off, but to me it was like a little homage to technique. It was a homage to, like, you know, the old school, like, dancing, you know, showing that you should have good basics. And by the time we finished dancing, the weave started to feel magical. It was like floating. I love the feeling of it. When I first started doing it for many years, it was very twisted. I know what you're feeling, like it was awkward, it was hard, and it just comes back down to practicing and understanding the body and foot positions for the man and lady, particularly in promenade, right? When you're in promenade position, you need her to be there so she can swing around you on step 2, okay? Now, one last tip about a weave, just for those who want to know. When you have the lady coming outside you on step 2, she's turning around you, your body is creating the turn, but your leg should delay just a little bit so you don't hit her. So what you want to practice is stepping forward on 1, let the body swing, then step through on 2. And she should be around you on step 2 by then because of your body swing, but your delayed leg. I hope that helps you. I want to hit into the second question, and this is on the quick step about turn. So let me keep going through here. When we look at turning, anyone else have a problem with turns? Yeah, right? Turns are quite difficult when you don't understand the idea of what we call the chart heading of amount of turn and also alignment. The two matter when you go from beginner to intermediate, right? When you start getting into intermediate dancing, meaning you're like, how do I improve the basic steps I'm doing? You must start to learn what alignment means. You must start to understand how turn functions, okay? There are general rules that apply, and then there's some things that change depending on figures and depending on the dance you're doing. However, the basic rule is this. Well, the amount of turn is, well, how much turn are you making through your feet? And alignment is, where are your feet in relation to the room? So with those two things in mind, the question is this on Quickstep. It's from Nicola. I don't know if it makes any sense or not, but when I'm dancing the Quickstep as a leader, I partner other people in my school. I sometimes struggle to make my turn so that I'm backing the line of dance at the end of a figure. She doesn't name the figure, but we're just going to use a natural turn as an example. To begin a new one. This means that my alignment is incorrect, and I don't understand why this happens. Okay, Very common problem. Now, again, if you're new to the word alignment, alignment is where essentially I think of it as a compass, right? You've got a dance compass. Your north is your line of dance. So your true north is always the line of dance, which is the invisible line that follows around the room, right? It just essentially, if you're a man and you're facing the wall, your line of dance will be to your left. If you're facing down the room and the wall is to your right, we've found our line of dance. And so the line of dance is true north. So therefore, center is the center, wall is the wall, and I've got diagonal to center, diagonal to wall, and against the line of dance. Well, there are I've got 8 alignments, and the way I like to think about my alignments is with some pizza. A little piece of pizza, or if you don't like pizza, some pie. Why? Because 1 slice of pie or pizza is equivalent to 1/8 of a turn. 2 slices is the equivalent to 1/4 of a turn. 3 slices is 3/8 of a turn, and 4 slices, man, you must be hungry, because that is half a turn. Half a turn is the most that we make as ballroom dancers, okay? We can't make more than that in the sense of a turn. When we rotate, spin, or spin, we can certainly do more than that. We can do 5/8 of a turn. But when we look at doing a turn together, such as the natural turn, we're not going to do more than half a turn, no way. So think of it like this as a general rule. All turns at the, so let's say natural turns, for example, have 3/8 of a turn. Now, if you're going forward, here is what the principle of turn is. If I'm going forward for my natural turn in the quick step, and I go forward with the right foot as the man, I'll do the lady in a moment, I go forward as the right foot as the man on slow, right? My first step is forward. My second step, I divide up the turn. There's 1/4 of a turn made, and then on the second and third step, I have 1/8 of a turn to close. So 1/4 plus 1/8, 1 piece of pizza plus 2 is 3/8 of a turn. What happens on step 2 and 3 is my feet have to create a swivel to close. If I create that swivel, I'm going to end backing the line of dance, which is what the answer is there. It's the correct amount of turn. If I do not make the correct swiveling action to close, and I just make my feet come together, I am now backing diagonal to center. I've effectively only done 1/4 of a turn, not 3/8. This is a big problem, because now, where's my next step? My next step will be diagonally to center. So if I was doing a spin turn, well, now I'm going the actual entirely wrong direction, okay? So turn matters, so does alignment. So if you're confused on turn, then at least understand where alignment should finish. Now you're saying it should finish down the line of dance. Well, let's do it as a lady. And this is the same rule as a man, by the way, when we go backwards. So when we go backwards, the principle of turn is a little different. We go backwards for slow, but we make all of the turn on the second step. So my foot must be pointing the alignment I'm going. This is critically important. If my foot points, say, diagonal to center, when I go to close, I'm going to create a swivel because of the man's swing, or the partner's swing. Because of that, it's going to throw us both off. So the rule of turn when you go backwards is that you always point the alignment that you are finishing. And in this case, it's the line of dance. So again, you must know where you're going, but because you do, we can now just close, because the person coming around us is swiveling. We will end exactly where we need to, setting up for the next step. So I would recommend writing out your steps. I would recommend then going through the amounts of turn and alignment, and that way it's going to help you to know exactly where you should be finishing. Then you practice it. Practice the natural turn till you're blue in the face. Practice going forward, side step, swivel to close and lower. Practice going backwards. Backwards, point, close and lower, no swivel. And you'll find that will change everything. Next question comes from Lianis. And this is about Latin hips. What's going on? All right, so how do I create better Latin hip movement? Great question. So what you would do is essentially understand there are 4 types of hip action in Latin. Now, I've done a free masterclass on this you can find at ballroommastery.tv or .com, where I actually go through in depth about the Latin hips, but very quickly we have rotational movement, settling movement, lateral movement, and hip twists. That's a very sort of foundational technique to Latin. So what you want to practice is the rotational movements, okay? So the hips are not just doing a circle, like around, if I do a side on, they're not doing like a circle like that. What's going on? Good morning, right? What we want to do is create a figure of 8. Hip goes to corner, hip goes to the corner. the hips go back as well. And so I go to the left, I bring it back, and I go to the right, and I bring it back. And left, right, like that. Now I try to reduce the bending of my knees as much as possible, because the more I bend, the less quality the movement is in my hips, and the weirder it looks. So what you can do, just trying to find maybe I'll go onto my wall, get ready for this, right? Find a wall, get your body weight forward into the wall, and then use your hips to circle around, focusing on pulling up through your core, all right? Not collapsing through your back. And then you can practice your hip action and hip movement again and again. And you'll find over time you'll start to coordinate, break your body apart, it'll start to heal, and then it will break again, and you'll get more and more flexible. But you want to practice that rhythmical rotation of going back and forward and keeping your hips and your head as still as possible, okay? So we're using the hip action, and that will eventually help us to move foot to foot, okay? To create better quality rhythmical action in Latin dancing. The last one comes from Terry. He writes to me about the politics of dancing. By the way, if you're liking this, let me know. Love to know what you think. Would love to know if you're feeling this. I would love to know if this is something that you like, and then let me know your questions as we go through this a little bit more. So, the question from Mr. Terry, here we go. Since you're great at mindset coaching, there's been a lot of controversy about blow-ups, judges, controlled sanctioning bodies, and organizers. Lots of complaints about corrupt judging, conflicts of interest between judges and organizers and studios. It'd be interesting to get my position on politics. It's very frustrating and discouraging, to say the least. Okay, so man, I've got a lot to say about this, and I'm not, look, where there's people, there is politics. Now, unless you're going to be part of the solution, don't really get too involved in the problems, because you're just adding fuel to the fire. Now, that may not be a popular opinion, but our coach was the president of, one of our governing bodies here in Australia. She always said to me, Vaughan, like, if you're not prepared to do something about it, don't bother going out there and complaining and bitching and moaning about it all. Do something. And so for me, ballroom mastery is my way of staying out of it. It's adding value and inspiring dancers globally to be like, listen, rise above the pettiness of that. Here's what happens in dancing, right? It's sort of like any organization. You get people who become really good at dancing, like seriously good, right? Beautiful dancers, legends in the sport. You got, let's say, hobbyist, social dancers, medalists, low-grade competitors, amateur competitors, top amateur competitors, professionals, world professionals, champions, and legends, right? So there's this massive hierarchy, and you can imagine what the ego is like generally as it goes up, yeah? It changes a lot for a lot of these people. Not all of them, but I have worked with some of the names that you would know and be familiar with, the legends in the sport. Oh my God, never again. I just do my own thing, because the egos are just so uncontrollably bad. It's like they just don't see outside themselves. And when people don't see outside themselves and they're in positions of leadership, you're gonna have a very big problem, right? So one of the issues with people ascending the hierarchy is that it automatically gives them more positions of power, so to speak, but it doesn't mean they're competent in those positions of power. A classic example of this is in real estate. When I used to work in real estate to fund my dance streams in my early 20s, well, I would notice people who were very, very good at selling would get promoted to be managers. No, salespeople do not make good managers, okay? They're two different skill sets. Then they became office managers. Then they became shareholders awfully. This was their hierarchy ascension, because the results were so good at what they did, they automatically got promoted. However, the skill sets didn't exist. So one of the big challenges that you and I face is that you get people in positions of power who are corrupt, and they are driven by a need that fills their own ego more than the betterment of dancing, and it really holds things back. Now, it's easy to complain about this, but what are you doing about it? I always say that at the end of the day, if you are going to let other people control how you feel, you're screwed. Then you can't do a lot, really, about the bias of judging. It exists. I think any judge who doesn't say that bias doesn't exist, they're not really enlightened. They're not switched on. Of course bias exists. We can't help it. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink, and it is about this prejudice that we have that's unconscious between the moment we meet someone and we first think about them. There's something called a blink. That's what he refers to. A snap judgment on the person. We sum them up instantaneously. We cannot help doing this. And then we rationalize it, we talk about it, we think about it, we give the person a chance to make that first impression. And so when people are judging dancing, it's extremely hard not to bring your own bias into it, right? What you like, what you don't like, what you may not like the couple, this and that. So having a pure judge doesn't exist. So that's why there's a number of judges to get a majority rule. Now, one of the difficult things is that if you're up in the adjudicating ranks, for you to have a different opinion of anyone else, you now separate yourself from the group. And do not confuse this. It's tribal, right? You're in a different tribe and you're an adjudicator, and everybody's trying to make sure that they mark the same. Now, if you dare to be different, you will be ostracized or you'll be kicked out of the group. I am not part of any group. I hated most of the dancers that I competed against in the sense of their attitudes, right? Not them as personally as people, just their attitudes, man, sucked. They were just not nice people, not friendly, didn't want to really chat about stuff, were just so wrapped up in their own, like, I'm too good, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, man, at the end of the day, you're just a skilled dancer, but what are you actually doing that's of value to the world? What are you bringing to humanity as well? Like, where are you at on that level? And so, that's sort of where I come from. It doesn't make me very popular. One of the president, I think, of DanceSport Australia, I remember speaking to him about this competition that my coach ran. It was the biggest championship in Australia for 25 years, okay? When she retired and I took over her studio and rebranded it and started doing things, I got involved in the competition. Competition was making money. It was in profit for 25 years. It is rare for competition to be in profit for that long, right? Anyways, so guess what happened? Some newbie, like, oh my God, people came in and they're like, let's make this comp different and better. It's like, you're an idiot. You follow the model. If somebody's proven a model of successful competitions, you don't come in and start changing it. You run with it and you make small adjustments as you go along. I mean, that's just basic business. But this is what happens with people who become good at dancing and get positions of control and don't have the skill set that matches. Is they start to go, I'm going to make it better. Why? Well, because, I'm creative and I'm artistic and, I just think it should be done a different way. It's like, no, if something's working, you've got to be very careful with the changes you make, especially if you haven't run the comp before. Anyways, within 5 years, the competition had tanked, run into the ground, literally because of the egos of everyone who controlled it. Now, I remember speaking to the president of DanceSport Australia about this, and I was like, why wasn't my coach invited to judge at the competition she founded, and now she's retired? Why not? That's a bit of an insult. He said, well, the board believes that a new generation needs to come in. We need younger blood. I was so insulted. I was just like, I hung up the phone and went, this is the shit that I don't get involved with. I don't get into politics of dancing because I don't want to be involved in it, right? And I think if that's the attitude, what is that saying about the legacy of the sport, right? What's that doing? So the reason I'm mentioning that to you is because what keeps me motivated to dance is dancing, okay? What keeps me going is not results on a comp floor. Like, whatever, not world champion. What the hell do I care? Even if you are a champion, like there's so many issues you've got to deal with, right? But the point is that you've got to do it for a reason beyond winning over a judge. I mean, really, you know what I mean? You've got to do it for a reason bigger than just pleasing a coach. You've got to do it so something inside you will go over the adversity you're going to face, because it's in every organization. Now, thankfully, Anna Richard Gleave started a movement called Freedom to Dance, because this is such a prevalent problem and it's such an issue on the world scale. So there's so much we could talk about with this, but my bottom line for you all is that politics is going to happen. How you choose to respond to it is going to determine your success. Do you give in and start getting involved in the rumors and the gossip, or just detach a little bit, focus on why you dance and get involved? At the end of the day, they can't ignore you if you keep showing up. Ultimately, for me personally, I didn't get involved in the politics. I stayed away from it. It didn't make me popular. Pretty sure I'm not a very popular, teacher in that sense amongst the circuit. Do I give a shit? I'm out here doing what I love to do, spreading goodwill, focusing on helping you to become better. That's what matters, you know what I mean? And so if I do that, the game is changing, and so the tyranny and the corruption can't stand when that happens, because there is no corrupt structure that actually lasts in the history of the world. So with the Freedom to Dance movement that Anna Richard Gleave started, They're saying you could just dance, no corruption, just turn up. You know, like you don't have to be part of this organization or that. It's just open to all. And so I believe you should go and support those sorts of competitions. And I believe that you should dance from a reason that's pure and something that you want to do. And then be a voice of change within your own circle of people who you're around, and all share this common passion that we have and not be dissuaded by other people. I do recall, look, if I told you the truth of some of the stuff that's happened behind the scenes to me personally with my wife, you would be like, how did you even manage to stay dancing? You know, like we were robbed of representational rights one year, and it was just because they felt like doing it, to be honest. And I was like, this is just crazy, you know, like you get all sorts of weird stuff happening. I've had adjudicators send me inappropriate pictures. There was an adjudicator who sexually abused one of my students. He had to get mental help and quit dancing altogether. Like, it's just phenomenal what some people do. At the end of the day, though, you can't let that taint your passion for dancing, because that stuff happens everywhere, and it's terrible, and it shouldn't happen. Something should be done about it. And something is being done about it. There is things changing in the pipeline. So my suggestion to you is to be part of that, to go with the change. Fight against the corruption to an extent where is possible for you, okay? And if you really want to make a difference, you've got to get involved hardcore and do things proactively, like run your own events that aren't, you know, that are the way you want to see them done. That's one of the reasons I run a business. I cannot work for someone else. So therefore, I work for myself, so I can at least serve my customers, because customers are the boss. I got to make sure that I serve them, not an actual boss. All right. So anyways, I hope this helped you. I hope it inspired you to reach above and beyond, and to not get involved on the petty level, but to also make sure that you stand strong in the face of any corruption that you might see, and to speak up if you see inaction and things not working. This is Vaughan. Thank you for today. Thank you for the long dance rant. I hope this helped you, and I'll see you in the next episode.